It does it when we are looking at very specific tasks. For example, to teach a robot to pick up a raw egg and put it somewhere, crack it, and make a fried egg in the pan. We can teach a robot that directly with pattern recognition. Or to have biometrics, fingerprints, to understand information inside DNA. For these, the augmentation of human capabilities is fantastic. Addressing global challenges. Climate change is one of them. Okay, I'm almost done. Climate change is one of them. Poverty, disease, these kind of things, these are problems we can solve by looking at data, by let AI find the right connections, to find associations, to find qualitative and quantitative information that leads to solving significant problems. Another one is drug discovery, which is actually bringing in an increasing rate now drugs on the market much faster than 20 years ago. So improved decision making, finance, governance, urban planning, all of these are fantastic examples where AI augments us. We should focus on these things. These are worthwhile to have. New forms of creativity and understanding. Look how we make movies these days, how we create analytical programs that help us to find the needle in the haystack. All of these are important things, and where they can mimic human cognition and intelligence and extend it. So the interception points, and I want to just go very briefly through them. So prioritizing augmentation over automation. I mentioned it several times now. This is very important. Ethical frameworks and regulation. Yeah, we all don't like regulations, but what needs to happen now, just like when we tried to curtail who can build nuclear bombs and how and under what policy would they ever be used. We need to do the same with AI. We cannot afford no longer on a global scale to collaborate. This is a watershed moment. It is not possible to move forward where tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different AIs are being created and unleashed on society with effects and consequences that are uncontrollable. When we talked about this subject 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was something that was interesting. It was an academic discussion. This is not any longer an academic discussion. This is a discussion about, do we survive? Do we actually control our destiny? This is very important. And for that, we have to have ethical frameworks and regulation. Redistribution of economic gains. Here we go again. Probably somebody in this room, or maybe many of you already say, oh, communism, socialism. Well, when we have people that make 400 billion or own 400 billion, and they earn it out of unleashing their technologies onto society, and we know that people that are using these technologies often don't know how to make ends meet, how to pay their rent, how to buy food for their children. There's something profoundly wrong. Now, it doesn't matter whether you are capitalist, a communist, a socialist, whatever you are, it doesn't really matter. On the end of the day, it matters, are we having a society in which we are not descending in conflict, but in collaboration. And AI is testing that very point to the limit. Pardon me? Yes, I am at my end. This is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this sobering and chilling overview of the situation. Now let's move on, let's brace up and move on. Things are going down the drain, but we should continue. Now, the next speaker is now Mircea Dumitru, Vice President of the Romanian Academy, member of the Academia Europeană, and the almost future academic director of this. This is the first time, you have never seen it, this is of the Bucharest hub. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Sorin. Thank you, Professor Antohi, and thank you all for being here. In the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts about some philosophical aspects of AI. Of course, people might legitimately wonder what a philosopher could contribute to this discussion in a systematic way, because if we think in a historical way, of course, philosophers, who at that time were also scientists, thought for the first time this idea of building machine-like models for human thought, human thinking. Thomas Hobbes was one of them, truly believing that human mind can be modeled as a machine. Of course, the level of understanding machines in the 16th century was completely different from what we have now. And then some other very influential philosophers in the European tradition came along with some fascinating ideas. Descartes, for instance. Descartes was not mentioned specifically in the talk that our colleague gave about chatting with GPT chat bot. But nevertheless, Descartes was one of the philosophers who truly thought that understanding consciousness takes much more than understanding how physicalist devices work. So the way I am understanding what a philosopher could contribute to this kind of discussion is not the usual way that we see philosophers, like scolding people and announcing some sort of Armageddon. But in contradistinction to that, I truly believe that philosopher could offer a sort of more nuanced exploration of some topics. And in my case, now I'm going to say a few words about large language models, LLMs for short, like ChatGPT, and about what their future holds. And one question that I'm going to address is how should we go about understanding LLMs, and whether or not those language models truly, genuinely understand what they are saying. Or maybe, and this is actually my own view currently, is it possible that what appears to be intelligence in LLMs may be a mirror that merely reflects the intelligence of the interviewer, of the human, natural, social, political mind and intelligence that we have? So my cautionary attitude is based also on the fact that, if you recall the starting point of the discussion in AI, way back in 1956, and I checked that on the internet just to make sure that everything is okay information-wise, they had this Dartmouth summer research project on artificial intelligence in the summer of 1956. And people like Claude Shannon, John McCarthy, Nathaniel Rochester, Marvin Minsky actually came up with this new field of research, AI. And one of them, if I'm not wrong, John McCarthy, came up with the very word artificial intelligence. Interestingly enough, ironically, John McCarthy was the one who actually was very sorry for coming up with this term, because just using the term intelligence in connection with the artificial, he said that he created a very strong metaphor which actually actioned like a sort of pitfall. We are trapped in that kind of metaphor. And of course, we understand very well that now large language models like ChatGPT have amazing capabilities. They are text generators. They could summarize long text, long documents. They translate almost simultaneously. They answer our questions. They chat with us. I would indulge more into these programs if they are going also to gossip, because gossiping is something very peculiar to the natural intelligence, but nevertheless, they can chat with us. And it is quite natural to be very happy and to say that those capabilities are so bright that we have to dwell upon that and to leave aside a bit some other things that may not be what we need in order to understand how human mind, human consciousness, in particular natural language, work. So in the 10 minutes that are left for my presentation, let me just focus on some limitations of AI, and in particular of LLMs. And amongst those things that we know, that LLMs could hallucinate false information. They are sensitive to prompt phrasing in the sense that they do not parse very well structural ambiguity or word ambiguity. But what I am very much interested into in my own research is the lack of true understanding or of consciousness of those algorithms, of those programs that are the LLMs. On some other occasions, I talked from my own logical and philosophical perspective about AI, starting with the work of Kurt Gödel, and that was rather technical because the limitations that incompleted theorems are showing to the power of formalism also have consequences on our understanding of AI. But this time I am going to address the issue from a different perspective, and what I want to show you is that paying attention to how natural language works, and linguists and philosophers of language actually thought very profoundly about that, maybe more than computer scientists, because they started thinking about intelligence and language 200-300 years ago. And pay attention to that, we see that there are some conceptual limitations when we compare natural language with the large language models that basically is this kind of AI like ChatGPT. And in the end of the day, you'll see that what we are after here is how we understand the concept of meaning. And I was very happy to see in the presentation of Professor Ștefan, member of Romanian Academy, that meaning for engineers as well is a sort of action. Meaning is a pattern of action. And this is something that when we use natural language, for me at least, seems to be completely different than AI and some other algorithms. No, this is just human. This is the gossiping thing that I mentioned. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah. So let me just summarize my ideas. Basically, I have three threads that I want to combine into a sort of argument, a conceptual argument, to the effect that the way natural language works is radically different from at least the perspective that we have right now on LLMs. One of the aspects deals with what is called speech acts theory, which is a concept in the philosophy of language that explains how we use language not just to convey information, but also to perform actions. Most of you may already know that this view was originally developed by the Oxonian philosopher J.L. Austin, member of an exquisite group of natural language philosophers. So way back in 1950s, they developed this view about some types of speech acts, and he divided the speech acts into three categories: locutionary act, which is the actual act of saying something with a specific meaning, like for instance, it is the case that I'm giving a talk right now. Then we have the elocutionary act, which is the intended function behind the utterance. It's not only that I utter sentences, but I have a theory of mind of my own, and I also project on you that you might be interested in what I'm saying. Maybe not, but this is actually my intention when I utter that. And last but not least, there is the perlocutionary act, which is the effect of my utterances in your own minds and attitudes. So it's not only conveying information. When I'm conveying information, I do many other things. I do things with words. And that was actually the title, the catchphrase of one of the most important books in this tradition, authored by J.L. Austin. This tradition flourished, even now it's a very thriving domain, and John Searle in California also developed this theory. And the significance for my talk here is that speech act theory shows that language is not just about stating facts, but about doing things with words, like promising, ordering, apologizing, or declaring. And as such, it has influenced this approach to language, linguistics, pragmatics, even artificial intelligence, in a way, and legal theory. Now, the second aspect comes also from a sort of outcome of the speech act theory, and is how we construct social reality, like the one that we share together right now. And in that regard, language is very important. The speech acts are very important, because we construct a shared social world through language, through collective beliefs, through the idea of rule following. And reality is not just physical reality, it's also social reality. It's something that we build based, of course, on some physical facts. And what is very important in regard to that is that through language and through our capacities of the mind, we don't only have an I intention in the first person, but we have a collective intention. There is that collective intentionality. The last thing in my argument is the place, the role, the significance, the importance of metaphors, also related to using languages. Some people may be in a sort of reductionist way think that metaphors are fundamental only to literature, to poetry. No. Metaphors are very important, are essential for the structure of human thought. Actually, most of our utterances are metaphorical, even in the most abstruse sciences like mathematics or physics. A very important book in that tradition, authored by Lakoff and Johnson, the title of the book, Metaphors We Live By, 1980, summarized this view, arguing that metaphor is central to human thinking, not just speech, because it shapes how we reason, how we make decisions, how we understand abstract concepts. Making metaphors deeply are embedded in our conceptual systems. What is now at stake? So what was my intention behind my utterances? The way this kind of algorithm works, LLMs, which basically are advanced artificial intelligence systems trained on vast amounts of text, of language, text data, to understand and generate human-like language. And they are roughly neural networks that have been trained to predict the next word in a sentence. So this kind of approaching the language is just a very tiny part of what languages are doing in our cultures and in our history. And just to put in a very dogmatic and a very blunt way, just to provoke, to be a challenge here for the discussion, is that, and this is how I wrap up the whole discussion, LLMs do not perform speech acts, they do not mean or intend anything, only people, individual or collectively, mean or intend anything. LLMs do not form either I or we intentions. LLMs do not create or understand metaphors. Natural languages, natural intelligence, which is also social and political intelligence, which evolves. And thought means through speech acts, and those are inherently human. We form, we intention in social environments and political environments. We invent, we create, we think with and through metaphors. Meanings are human activities, and so far LLMs do not and maybe cannot in principle mean anything or something. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Of course, there is a deep problem with LLMs, that is the literal rather than figurative or more complex understandings that they carry and they create and they transfer. And this is, of course, a very serious issue in all language sharing. Thank you very much, Mircea, Dumitru, for this stringent argument in favor, actually, of natural language and of natural intelligence, maybe the only one. Thank you. Now we move to the next presentation by Florin-Călin Păun, who's coming all the way from France to entertain us here with the qualificative AI, bringing dubito ergo cogito into the machine. So you have the floor.
Thank you. Hi everybody. I'm glad to be here. And I used to be an aerospace engineer, but the life brought me to, let's say, discover a new type of intelligence, not necessarily artificial. And the discussions I heard till now reminds me what one of my mentors, Joël de Ronet, who is one of the creator of the bioinformatics, answered to a question he received from the press. Please tell us, artificial intelligence is dangerous? I was thinking to the hardest speech. And the answer was absolutely yes, but by far less than the human stupidity. Okay? So I'm here to introduce the qualificative AI, and I'm a speaker, but there are some other co-authors of what I will present, Ingrid, and of course ChatGPT. And that's very nice, because it is the perfect student. Once you get him all the content, he's able to summarize, to resume, to synthesize, but never ask him something else. And that's why I'm speaking about, when I'm speaking about artificial intelligence, I refuse to pronounce the word intelligence, because it's not intelligence. It's artificial half intelligence, and we will discover why. In cognitive science, I'm anticipating my presentation, and I promise to some friends that I will try to not burn the roof, because I'm quite provocative, apparently. But in cognitive science, the manipulation of data intelligently, it's only based on connective and symbolic. And we'll understand what's the difference, because until now, unfortunately, nobody spoke about. And we had more than 3 hours speaking about A half E, okay? Let's move. First, some generic questions to be tackled with you. What is fake versus what is true? Nowadays, what is fake, what is true? Please look in the internet. Do you know that 96% of the data are irrelevant, fake, or a big discovery? I think the communication director of Trump from the first part will have a Nobel Prize, because she invented the so-called alternative facts, which means half of truth extracted from their context, and I also appreciate the massive, the huge content of good information that Professor Academician Ștefan give us with objects, meaning, and context, which form an information. If you take one of them, it's over. It's no more information. Okay? Let's move far away. What is wrong versus what is right? And some of the speakers already introduced the notion of ethics, morals. Do you think ChatGPT knows about? Absolutely, he will answer. He will answer if you are asking him what is ethics. He will tell you what is ethics because he gathers information from what is ethics. But he probably put some ethics from dictatorships or things like that, yeah, inside. Yeah, well, as you mentioned at your opening, yeah, 96% it's fake, alternative, or irrelevant. And going to irrelevant, what is superficial versus what is important? And how about your proficiency in, and this is the first question, what about our daily decision making? How you are making decisions, by the way? When you woke up, your first decision, how I will gonna dress today? Yes? We are taking decisions daily. Daily. When I heard my counter ego called Păun, like me, telling me that the kids are not reading anymore nowadays. In French, we are saying, il y a de beaux paires de claques qui se perdent, which means there are some pairs of claques like this which are lost. Who the hell are they to not read? I'm sorry to tell this, but they need to be forced to read. They need to be forced to become better, if not. Okay? If not, why? You know, again, the French brought to the world something called the Cartesian spirit with Pascal Descartes, who is giving the citation of my title, Dubito ergo cogito, cogito ergo sum. I'm not existing if I'm not thinking as a man, as a human. Okay? And I'm not thinking if I don't have doubts. So stop trying to make the confusion that the AI, it's thinking. It's not thinking. It's only presenting connective intelligence, which we'll see what it means. Connective intelligence, not symbolic, not models of thinking, not thinking patterns. Okay? Only connective, which in a way means I'm able to identify, recognize, categorize objects. Done. Nothing else. So stop call it I. It's artificial half I. Okay? What about the impact? Well, I let you to see in the Romanian election the TikTok nowadays, and you will understand the impact. Yeah? And no polemics. Yeah? In our life, in our societies, impact on voting, an impact on voting rights. Do you know what means true democracy? Written in 1792 in Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, means you create value of public utility, you are rewarded by the society, the reward you could accumulate it becomes private property granted by the state, then you pay taxes on this base, and by paying taxes you become citizen with the right to vote. Ta-da! It's over. Done. From 48, We are telling to a young fellow, you have 18 years old, 80 years without a day, you're stupid, shut up. You have 18 years, please come in and vote with us. We'll teach you how to vote. It's over. Democracy, it does not exist, and I invite you to see again the movie Idiocracy. Because with the internet, we are deeply till here in this, sorry for the vocabulary, in this kind of non-knowledge. Bezna minții, pe românește. Okay? How do the platforms on social networks decide the truth of data today? They just fire, because Trump was elected, all the fact checkers. The number of likes will provide you the truth. Do you understand what is meaning this? The number of likes is providing the truth. Yeah. We definitely need to change the digital business model of the platforms. Theoretical foundations. I invite you to read Condorcet paradox and Arrow's theorem. They clearly demonstrate that you could not have a majority opinion with equal voices. Wow. Wow. It's exactly what we are discussing about nowadays. What means democracy? Okay? I will let this to the organizer, and I want to spread it with everybody. I put a lot of information here for you to read at home if you want. So I'm coming from this world, and I was forced to go into studying the AI because the deep impact it is making on my activities, because I'm an aerospace guy and a defense guy, working since 30 years old in France, okay? So definitely it's hitting everything. It's blowing up all the business models. It's shaping completely the value chain. The world we know, it's impacted by the digital tsunami, okay? Second part, scientific solution based on research. Takeaway, I will get faster. Interdependency of evolutions in economic innovation and evaluation. What means truth? What is wrong? What is fake? Again. Qualificative AI. We are bridging the economy theory, the cognitive science, Condorcet and social choice theory, Ștefan on cybernetics, the feedback loop with the human, Arrow's impossibility theorem. You see, I underline no voting system can perfectly reflect individual preferences while also meeting a set of fair criteria. Wow! What? Condorcet. Majority voting can lead to intransitive or inconsistent outcomes. Again, we are speaking about our lives, not about the election results in 2 weeks. Our lives. Lupascu, another Romanian in France, sorry for this, tiers-inclus theory. Contradictions and opposition in systems lead to change and evolution. Of course, we need conflicts. With no conflicts, no evolution. No Darwin. Third part, contribution to cognitive science. I'm sorry, my presentation is outlined from 39 slides I presented to Lugano in an AI forum, so I reduced it only to 15 and 4. I just see it like this. But I could share the 39 slides if you are interested, just to know. Another takeaway. So, Condorcet, Arrow, Odobleja, Lupascu, plus, I'm sorry, this is mine, asymmetry compensation. Asymmetry is creating value. It's not me who said it, it's Joseph Stiglitz, another Nobel Prize, okay? differences are creating value. 1 plus 1 in economy is never equal to 2, unless for the money. Yeah. But when you put a cow with grass, you're going to have cheese, which is much more valuable than the cow plus the grass. Okay? But the asymmetries are creating the value. When the process is highly collaborative, I was operating technology transfer for the French NASA equivalent, where I was director at that time, and I discovered when people need to collaborate, you need to compensate the asymmetries. If not, they will not gonna work together. Okay? Man-machine symbiosis, feedback, and co-creation of trustful AI. It is what we intended to do, to build with the qualificative AI. And I'm coming to the key point of my presentation. You have here, yeah, it's working. This is the AI, from the cognitive science point of view classification, because you could speak from the user's point of view of the classification, generative AI, explicative AI, and so on. This is related to the usage you are making with the hammer. Yeah. But from cognitive science point of view, you only have 2 types. Connective, you identify objects and you categorize them. Deep learning, okay, easy. How you define a regulate polygon? You need to understand what means a point, a line between 2 points, a line closed in the points you start with, equal segments, equal angles. 5 deep levels. You know how to have a regulate polygon. This is the only thing that the AI is doing. None of the AIs are doing what we call symbolic. And this is the huge difference between a human baby with 3 pictures, he's able to recognize a cat. Why? Thinking pattern. Pointed ears equal cat. You need to program the modeler, need to program the AI to tell him, watch these parameters, and there you will detect a cat. And that's why we are paying so much the data scientists. They are the guys which are introducing symbolic thinking pattern in the usage of the AIs, which are only connective, regulate polygon, done, nothing else. And I'm speaking after 30 years of satellitary imaging automated treatment at Onera, okay? So it's going like this. But let me ask you, how you are taking decisions, and I'm finishing my presentation. How are you taking decisions? By recognizing objects? By thinking patterns? How you choose your new car? Security, acceleration, value per cost, okay? Criterias. How you are dressing today? Criterias. You put in your brain criterias of choice. And then you put weights on the criterias. For me, the most important is the color of my car. No, that's for my wife. For me, it's the power of the car, okay? By the way, the criteria could change from today to tomorrow because I slept like this or like this. It's the only way of speaking our cortex with our hypothalamus, emotions. But we are still handling data because we are weighing coefficients on criteria, and at the end, ta-da, this is my car. Okay, please tell me, what of the AI is giving this to you? None. And it is not symbolic neither. Symbolic is simply telling to you, work on these criteria with these weighting coefficients. Who's making the choice of criteria and the weights of criteria for you? Nobody, neither symbolic and neither connective. So that's why I call it qualificative. intelligence, and I said I need to bring this into a platform. Qualification. By the way, when I'm asking to my evaluators, because I have 10,000 and I stopped due to the RGPD, from 10,000, 1,000 play the game. And I say, from your point of view, how much I need to weigh the coefficient of an expert speaking about his thematic, from 0 to 1. Average, it's around 90%. A citizen who has nothing to do with the subject, but you need to listen to him. We are democratic, we are equal. 12% barely. So when the guys are voting to how much weight I'm taking into account an expert versus a normal citizen who do not care about the ballistic missiles, but he has to be listened because maybe the Russian will go in fury because we put a ballistic missile shield in Caracal. We put on a map of the world names like Caracal, you could imagine. And you need to listen to him. Well, only 12% wave coefficient. Okay? So you waive the criteria, you waive the voters. I'm not touching again elections. I don't want to be Cambridge Analytica, yes? But it's going there. So I will skip this. I let you hear a lot of facts about the qualificative AI, and I complicating even more. Well, I'm even in journals, papers in French, because some ministers said, this is the startup which could disrupt the GAFA. And I said to Munir Majoubi, who was digital ministry at that time, when he was the first to say this, Florin, you could disrupt the GAFA with this. I answered to him, Inshallah, Munir, Inshallah. You know, it's good, but this is the table of comparison between the different type of AI. So I let you hear, you have connective, symbolic, hybrid when we connect together. So if you want, you have some homework. I'm able to answer to each small comma or word if you want, because we had 10 years of research based on this, and that's why we put it there. As a conclusion, we try to help humans to make better decisions, okay? And this is the startup, cross finger for us. We are discussing with a sheikh from United Emirates for 25 million euro due diligence investing in the startup. So again, and this is a citation from Munir Majoubi here. Moderator is the European game changer. We cross fingers. And by the way, the mock-up was built by Romanian informaticians from Sibiu, because they are better and cheaper than the French. So I did it with them. Okay? And if you want to read, there are a lot of publications already in various papers, scientific papers, okay? And you have my coordinates on my website, so
You can call it a pessimistic view of AI as a kind of artificial half-wit, no, artificial half-intelligence, but I think it was realistic, sadly. Now, we are moving now to the next paper, but first of all, I want to check whether Marius Leordanu is with us. Okay, because he is actually quite sick, and we discussed over the phone. Actually, he gave me, in a nutshell, in a rather sizable nutshell, the gist of his presentation yesterday on the phone, but obviously he also felt that he might be contagious in the bad way with the viruses, and those he decided to stay at home. So we move on now to the last two presentations. One is the following one is by Ștefan Constantinescu about the European, who is from the University of Louvain. And for those who are connected in any way to the Academia Europaea, I would like to mention, well, the fact that he is a member of that, that's one thing, but then the other thing is that he is the president of the very serious business which is called SAPEA. I'm not going into detail, but just type or Google SAPEA and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, Ștefan Constantinescu.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here, and for a physician working in molecular biology, it's a great challenge to face experts in the most interesting area today, which is data science, computer science, artificial intelligence. Now, I am torn between giving my presentation that I prepared and answering to a lot of the concepts and questions that I heard. So I will not do that. I will just say one thing, and that is that for my own research in proteins and genomes, AI has been enormously useful. The AlphaFold changed our life because it allows correct prediction of protein structure. And it was said that it doesn't work well for membrane proteins, but I can tell you that in 2013, we submitted a manuscript on the structure of a membrane protein, and by the time it was reviewed and accepted, God bless, in eLife, AlphaFold predicted it well as well. So it goes very, very, very fast. And so AI, or A-half-I, is a gold mine. And when you have a gold mine, it's difficult to regulate, to retard, to stop. It's a gold mine. So there is a rush, right? So it's very difficult. And what I'm going to tell you today is the boring part, is the regulation, is the attempt of the European Union to come up with some regulatory steps in the AI. And it all started in 2016 when Commissioner Moedas, who is now the mayor of Madrid, I think he came up with the idea that if the Commission has a question, scientific question, rather than addressing it to random ONGs or universities or institutes chosen ad hoc, they should address it to academies in Europe. And they created an umbrella of the 110 academies that exist in Europe, which are the science academies, which is what Romanian Academy is considered at, with the Council of European Academy of Sciences, but then the medical academies, the FEAM, the engineering academies, Eurocase, all European academies, and Academia Europaea. And so now in Europe, if the Commission, if the Parliament, all these people have questions, they address it to academies, because academies have elected members, and the elected members are competent, and they are able to say what is known for sure and what is not. And that is the role of this structure, which is called Scientific Advice Mechanism, which provides independent advice. That is, there's no money involved, there's no commercial involved, experts are not paid, and they respond to specific questions of the commissioners. And the mechanism has three pillars. There is a unit of the Commission, there is a group of chief scientific advisors, which are 7 individuals with exceptional abilities, that are supposed to not need to be experts in a field to make recommendations about a field, but then the 110 academies provide the evidence research report. So when a question comes, for example, how should Europe uptake AI? It's the 110 academies that provide experts. There are working groups. There is an evidence research report that is peer-reviewed and then published. And then based on that, the group of chief scientific advisors will produce a report. And so there are 7 individuals. They are now being changed. And these are the members of the umbrella of the 110 academies, in addition to the ones I mentioned, and of course Academia Europaea, which is now the host of this institute, together with the Romanian Academy. There is also a young Academy of Sciences of Europe, which is involved. And the academies do not need to send their own members. They can select their own sort of professors from universities, but they have to be validated by the academy. So this is a fact-check step. That is, you're sure you're going to send competent people. Now, there is a whole process involved where the academies will submit experts, and then there is a chair of the group of 2 chairs that is appointed by the lead network, which is, for example, for AI was Eurocase, the engineering academies, and then there is a working group that is around 10 to 20 people that meets several times. They can invite experts from US, from Japan, from China, from wherever in the world, and they have a couple of months from the request to really deliver a report. And that report is like a book, and it really states where the state of the art of the field is today, what the challenges are. Now, interestingly, for the European Commission, the academies should not make recommendations because we are too old. We shouldn't say what to be done in the future. We should say, this is the state of facts, this is what we know for sure, this is what we don't know, that's what's dangerous, but we're not going to make any recommendations. So it is only the group of chief scientific advisors, the 7 individuals, that will make the recommendations. And, you know, we had reports on solar radiation modifications, One Health governance, cancer screening, and then, of course, artificial intelligence, because that is why I'm presenting that to you today. Now, the advisor, the one key advisor that was responsible for this AI was a professor of divinity from Modena, right? A professor of theology, divinity professor. So for the Commission, divinity, theology, and AI are very, very linked. So you have to see how things sometimes in a non perhaps predictable way can come together. Now, so the EU still has no systemic policy to facilitate the uptake of AI in science. So that was a major question. How do you use AI in science? I can tell you that already in science, private companies use AI to verify fraud in journals. So AI can be very, very good and can be very, very useful. And so the other question was, how can the European Commission accelerate a responsible uptake of AI, providing access to high quality of AI? And this was a major question. And so these were the scientists that were involved in the working group that really edited the report with the co-chairs. And, you know, one problem we faced is that the AI is very strong in the private sector. And the Commission doesn't work that much with the private sector. So we had a lot of academics, but we didn't have Google, we didn't have DeepMind, we didn't have these people. And so we also have, Academia Europeană has a hub in Cardiff, which is a hub of literature search. Like Romania has now a hub in another area that you will hear about. And so all literature search for the Commission is done by Academia Europeană in Cardiff. Of course, the working group are experts. They know what the literature is. But the Commission wants to do a double work to make sure that we don't miss anything. And of course, a big problem is not everything that is published is good. So you have to have an AI way to check what is good and what is not good. And so this is like a book. It has 6 chapters. It describes the landscape of AI, the opportunities, the challenges, the risks, the impact on scientists and researchers' work, and of course, evidence-based policy options. Because in Europe, we still believe that the scientific fact needs to be proven, that evidence is important, and this half-truth should be sort of avoided. So industry, private sector is very strong in AI, and that's a landscape element that we cannot avoid. Most AI infrastructures that are large and very powerful are located outside Europe. The regulatory landscape is highly dynamic, and as I said, it's a gold mine. It's very hard to stop people mining the gold. But there are major opportunities of AI in science. It's uptaken by many areas of research in different fields. It proved to be very, very useful. But we are missing comprehensive studies of evaluation and of uptake. And then, as we heard, we have to have AI uptake in qualitative and theoretical developmental research in humanities, social sciences, and so on. For example, the European advice by academies cannot use AI. So we are not allowed to use AI, because of the fear that this will somehow bias the results. Now, there are a lot of challenges and risks of AI in science. I'm not going to go through it, except to say that there are a lot of biases and low quality data. And there is this myth in AI that the garbage in, garbage out idea is no longer true. If the garbage is enormous, it becomes good data. I am not technically competent to say whether this is true or not, but it is supported by many people in the field. Now, I'm not going to talk about the misinformation, the misleading, because the AI also helps really detect fraud in papers. The image twin programs, the Authenticate and others that are integrated now in AI systems help a lot the editors to make sure that the data is true. Of course, AI has impact on people, on research careers and jobs. Different skills will be necessary to be able to take advantage of AI. There are ideas of public-private partnerships that would benefit the landscape of AI education. And I have to say that ChatGPT advanced, for example, if you ask a good question, for example, a very advanced technique that you want to use that you don't know very well, it will list very good papers. So it depends how you use it. And I strongly advise to use the advanced feature of the ChatGPT. Now, of course, policy. Now, that is very, very important. It has to be based on science and has to be realistic. Again, it's a gold mine. You're not going to stop people mining the gold. But still, we have to create, and that is the major conclusion of the report, a coordinated EU effort to create a state-of-the-art facility of AI in academic research in Europe. So the idea is to create a European Center for AI, which would be the same thing as CERN was for physics. And it is not impossible that this will be done if the economic conditions will allow it. Now, we have the 4 sets of main recommendations made by the group of chief scientific advisors. Of course, the obvious: to improve the quality standards, to invest in research infrastructure, the one in Europe that I told you, ensure that AI is driven by people, and recognizing that this is a very dynamic interface. Now, the handover of this report and recommendations were done in April 2024. I suspect that this has to be revisited every 2 to 3 years because the field is extremely dynamic. And I'm going to end by saying that more than 20 years ago, when I was working at MIT at the Whitehead Institute, I had the honor and pleasure to meet Noam Chomsky. And Noam Chomsky gave conferences on language in children and saying that children, apparently for him at the time, don't learn languages. They just remember them. They knew them. They come up in complete sentences, in complete paragraphs, and that is just a question of recalling something they know. And he predicted that if we are able to understand that, we're going to create this kind of special human-like intelligence. And we're seeing that this may not be very far from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this image of how the European Commission and, in fact, other institutions of the European Union work. The funny thing about using experts by these august bodies is that experts are not allowed anymore, at least, to communicate their conclusions to those most, how shall I say, affected, especially when they are reviewing proposals. If you are an evaluator for the European Union system, you cannot communicate with this, the entity, with the author of that proposal about the content, which strikes me as a very inappropriate way of conduct, because you will never find out why exactly you are not happy with their proposal. But this is a fact, and this made me resign from my activities as an expert. Yes, it is a gold mine, and we don't know how to deal with it, and the gold rush is just, I think, is just starting. And, well, we shall see how far this gets us. Now, I wanted to, okay, Moshe, he is there. I wanted to end on a kind of, well, almost metaphysical tone, and I invited my old friend Moshe Idel, who is a member of the honorary member of the Romanian Academy, a member of the Academia Europeea. He was, of course, born in Târgu Neamț. Moshe, we all know that. And okay, he has a brilliant career worldwide. Now, among his many books, he was just I told him while we were busy here talking well, at least finished 2 more books. He has just finished 3 other books. He will do this. The way I got in touch with Moshe Idel is, I think, quite relevant to this discussion here, because he was personal friends and he was collaborating with another Romanian-born scholar, Ioan Petru Culianu. And in many ways, I inherited Moshe from Ioan Petru Culianu at his passing, because they were busy dealing with all kinds of topics. Maybe you will recognize some of these topics that might interest you in this book in Romanian, Jocurile Minții, by Ioan Petru Culianu, in which we collected a number of projects and just final papers he had managed to complete because his untimely death. And there is something else in his extraordinary book about which starts as a kind of historical synthesis on Gnosticism. In Romanian, it is called Gnozele Dualiste ale Occidentului, using the French title. In English, which actually was an almost entirely different book, the title is The Tree of Gnosis, and in which he is talking about things that are bringing us close here together as well, which is about, yes, large language models, the way they were discussed by mystics, by philosophers. Well, there was a mention here of the professor of divinity who was taken care of. That's quite relevant, actually, because it comes quite close to metaphysics, to the study of Gnosticism, to the study of systems, esoteric, where else, in which, including the largest of all language models, which is the Matesis Universalis, and of course the largest of all the fantasies of the world of using a kind of Matesis Universalis combined with an Ars Combinatoria and so on. So all these things are there. This is why I invited Moshe to close this day for us. Moshe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I thought that I was invited because I wrote a book on the golem where in the subtitle it's written Artificial Anthropoid. So I shall try to justify my invitation. First, the idea of magic was part of the theory of the development of science by a lady, Dame Frances Amelia Yates, who claimed that European science, starting in the Renaissance, is connected to the fact that magic was flourishing in this period. This theory of development of science was not so well accepted. However, I would like to make the point here that at least in the case of the magic of the golem that I'm going to explain in a moment, it may contribute something to understanding the emergence of artificial intelligence. So the golem was an artificial anthropoid, meaning some structure of clay that was vivified by, and that's the important point, by a series of combinations of letters. Basically, combinations of two letters, which were believed to have induced within the limbs of this clay structure power. So this artificial anthropoid started to serve as a servant or for many other purposes, but the term golem means basically someone who is foolish or stupid. In modern Hebrew, most of the people don't know about the historical golem. They know that the golem is stupid, meaning an unintelligent person. However, in this tradition, which started in southern Germany among Jews in 12th, 13th century, and developed in the period of the Renaissance, this tradition was attributed to several Jewish authorities as the maximum achievement. In early 17th century, a very respectable authority named Maral of Prague was attributed the creation of the golem in Prague, not to show to the emperor his superior knowledge. And later on, we have more and more evidence about authorities who created this form of golem. What is important is the fact that one of the originators of cybernetics, named Norbert Wiener, even wrote a book named Golem and a God in Golem Incorporated. So when I was writing the book on the golem, I immediately started to read Norbert Wiener's book, and I was actually disappointed. He knew about the artificial creativity. What he didn't know is the fact that this artificial creativity is done by combinations of two letters, all the combinations of two letters. This part, which is very important part for many traditions, was unknown to him, because he knew some popular mythology, and nevertheless, he introduced the golem in his rather popular book on cybernetics. Now, what I would like to point out is the fact that in a certain moment in Jewish tradition, this creativity of the golem was actually stopped. That I would like to speak about the fears related to the creation of the golem. After a long period, several hundreds of years, we have many traditions about golem as the supreme achievement of Jewish masters. In a certain moment, there is a reticence, very clear reticence, that I'm going to present shortly, on two major cases in Judaism. The first one is found in the movement named Hasidism, late 18th century, when a tradition says that the master of the name, the magical name, was told that someone came to the small place who knows how to create the golem. His answer was very characteristic. does he know also how to create a Hasid, namely a person who is pious? Meaning, at a certain moment, this creation, the mechanical, artificial creation, was regarded as something inferior to what he conceived to be the most important human creation, to create a pious person, mainly to educate. Roughly at the same time, we have another tradition from the opponent camp of Hasidism, related to one of the geniuses of Judaism ever, also 18th century, late 18th century, in Lithuania, not far away from Hasidism, who was accomplished in all forms of Judaism. That at the age of 13, he started to create a golem. And then he was told, don't do it. You have to rely on yourself. Now, this Elijah ben Shlomo, the genius of Vilnius, had an incredible memory and a power of understanding text. In a way, he refused to create a golem. Together with the story of Hasidism, two different, totally different movements, we can see in a certain moment, people started to understand there is a danger in creating the golem. After a long tradition, they could rely on many, many texts to show that that is a great achievement. Two of the most important people in Judaism in the 18th century refused actually the ideal of the golem. Something which is hard to believe. Only few traditions earlier speak about the danger of the golem. That's not something new in the 18th century. But in a certain moment, traditions about the golem stopped to occur in Jewish literature, which I can understand only as the result of understanding there is a big danger in creating such an entity. The golem returned in Judaism much later in the 20th century among what can be called atheist Jews, who have a lot of novels and playwrights and whatever. But that's no more part of the Jewish traditional literature. Meaning it returned, like in the case of Winner, by someone who knew only the more superficial part of the golem, without being aware of great dangers involved in creating something like that. Medieval stuff regards magic as something positive, unlike what happens in some parts of Christianity. But in a certain moment, this positive vision, which is related to the artificial anthropoid, dissipates in Judaism. In a very clear manner, we see masters who refuse, not just ignores the idea of the golem, but there are clear statements about someone who could create the golem, but he refuses to create the golem. So, in a way, we have the return of the golem in, how to put it, atheistic Judaism. But there's no more part of the development of Jewish tradition in more orthodox part, but with the AI, I must say I have seen a return of the interest in the golem among scholars who read my book, and they had the impression that I know more. And even I received their books and I had some conversations with people dealing with AI, which unfortunately I couldn't help them in any way. But nevertheless, it is fascinating to see how the golem returned not only in the case of Wiener, but also in the case of Alexei Greenbaum from Paris, who wrote a book, Parole de Machine, Dialoguer avec une IA. I have the book because he wanted me to discuss with him about AI. So it is an interesting part to speak with those people in order to tell them, look, there was part of Jewish tradition, but it stopped to be in the moment people understood that they cannot rely and they shouldn't rely on the artificial, but they must do by themselves what they would like to do by using magic. So in the case of the golem, I believe that the theory of Amelia Yates, Frances Amelia Yates, that in a certain way, magic preceded science, can help understanding both the theory of Yates, but also the theory of AI, which is developing in a way, in a modest way, not to be misunderstood. In the case of Wiener, at least. From a purely magical tradition, no spiritual, into something which is very powerful. The golem was described always as very, very powerful, but also dangerous. So, the last part of this conference, I would like to tell you that, in fact, the danger was well understood by some masters who had to oppose something in their tradition in order to refuse a magical development which is, how to put it, became part of modern science. And in a certain conference in Heidelberg, I even listened to a lecture of a lady who claimed that she is the theological advisor of MIT, no less. She told about traditions at MIT related to the golem. That's for sure true for Wiener, but she spoke long after Wiener's death in '64. That was in 95, 96. And unfortunately, she didn't publish the lecture. And it's fascinating to see how a magical tradition enters science and, at least in a very modest way, influenced that. Just one of the stories, I have several stories, of people attempting to ask me about traditions which are becoming part of combinatory. The golem is part of combinatory techniques, with tables, and combinations of letters, and in a way, I believe that Professor Yates' thesis, which is rejected today, can contribute something to understanding why the artificial anthropoid becomes relevant may be unfortunately relevant, but at least it helps translating my books in several languages, including Romanian. So, despite the fact that I'm not a scientist, not a biologist, not a philosopher, maybe that the traditions on the golem and the understanding of the negative aspect of this tradition can contribute something to the discourse of the AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moshe. Thank you very much. Moshe Idel brought us back to some of the main points from the period before modern science was generated. I see. Thank you, Moshe. You hear me now. So, Moshe brought us back to the period before the birth of modern science, where magic and the early forms of science were intertwined and were difficult to disentangle. And this is a legacy which came to extraordinary results during the Renaissance and during the Christian Kabbalah literature of the time. And thus, in this respect, talking about the golem, he brought us back to some of the... Now, the book in Romanian is here. The book in English was published 35 years ago. It was, of course, translated into lots of other languages. Now, but mind you, Moshe Idel changes all the different versions in different languages. So if you read a book in one language and read again, because there will be something else and something new in another language. Learn more languages, read more editions. He brought us also back to some of the main, I would say, the core arguments around the division between artificial and natural, which means between two different forms of creation. Because traditionally, theologically, creation was a first degree, and then a second degree was the creation of something artificial. And this is a very, very intricate discussion in the literature about the golem, about this imposture of human beings who are trying to be second-degree creators, thus usurping the role of the creator. So these are things that are coming back, and no small wonder that so many people are going to Moshe Idel for advice. Now, we are coming to the end of the first half of this conference. Thank you very much. Thank you all for extraordinary presentations and for an interesting atmosphere. We covered a huge field of diverse problems. I hope we can return to these discussions maybe next year. Maybe we try, at this center of the Academia Europea, which will be open tomorrow, maybe we try to continue to pursue this discussion continued. Tomorrow there will be a second part of it, and Professor Dragoș Huru is here present. He will moderate the part of tomorrow from 10 in a different location, the club of the Clubul Academicienilor, or the club of the academicians. Unfortunately, I will not be able to join you tomorrow. For obvious reasons, we have the final discussion with the Academia Europea board tomorrow morning, and we are signing the agreement. So from tomorrow on, we shall exist to be nicer officially. So come back to the Academia Europea Bucharest hub. We are now already working under the sieges. There will be a second conference, as I said, at the end of this week on Saturday and Sunday on synchronism. of the highest possible level, I assure you, like this one. So thank you very much once again. Thank you.